Welcome to Afros and Audio's Black History Month interview series. My name is Talib Jasir, founder and CEO of Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, the first two-day conference for and by Black independent podcast creatives and audio professionals. I'm excited to spotlight 28 outstanding indie podcast creatives who answered the call to be a part of the series. Today, my guest is Shannon Chatmon. Welcome, and thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Okay, awesome. So tell us a bit about yourself. We'll get into the podcast in a minute, but tell us about you.
Well, I'm actually a 15-year educator. And so I started podcasting during 2020 when all the chaos was going on and all the back and forth on social media, people arguing about different things. And I just kind of fell in love with it. I'm typically a quiet person. My mother told me that she took me to the doctor when I was a child because she thought something was wrong with me.
Okay.
And the doctor told her, no, there's nothing wrong with her. She just doesn't want to talk. And so that's just how I've been all my life. So just thinking about me podcasting was kind of scary. But I actually fell in love with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're an observer, probably.
Yes.
Yeah, you watch what's around you before you engage. I resonate with that. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a bit about your podcast.
So I have two podcasts, actually. The one I started in 2020 is called You Talk, I'll Listen, and it focuses on mental health and sharing of people's stories. And just the premise that even if you don't agree with each other, if you know someone's story, it can really help you to empathize with that person and understand that person and understand kind of where they're coming from. And the second podcast that I started this past year in 2020 is called Blackivities pod. And that is a Black culture pod. So we talk about Black culture, we talk about Black history and kind of tie it into present day. We focus on what we like to call Black Panache, which is basically just the flair that we kind of throw into everything as Black people. Everything that we do, we influence what is pop culture. And I just think even looking at history, like we're such a resilient people. We were given bare minimum and we just turned it into something amazing. And so that's kind of the premise of Blackivities.
Okay, thank you. So I hear you saying we. Are you an interview podcast, or you have co-hosts on Black Panache?
I have a co-host, Lisa Hale. She is a poet. And so we even have spoken word on our episodes.
Okay. All right. And what about the first one? Did you start that as a solo podcast?
I started that one as an interview podcast. And basically the title of the show is What Actually Happened. So it's kind of a unique interview style. But I ask guiding questions and I just let my guests talk. Like a judgment-free space.
All right. Do you feel like you learned that format from somewhere else, or was that something that was very intuitive for you and it's just like, this is what I want to do, so I'm gonna do it?
I think it's pretty intuitive for me because I'm used to just sitting and listening. And I think that is something that we need to do more of.
Absolutely.
So that is definitely the premise for the show, and it definitely fits my personality.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you. What season are you in?
I have done 3 seasons of You Talk, I'll Listen. And for Blackivities, we've done 1 full season. And in February, we are starting our second season. So right in one of the blackest months of the year.
All right. Congratulations on that. So why podcasting? Like all the ways in which you can express and have a medium to have an outlet with, why did you choose podcasting?
You know what? During the pandemic and the quarantine, just being at home, I was listening to a lot of stuff. And something in me just said, you should start a podcast and you should call it You Talk, I'll Listen. And I have lots of ideas, and I kind of think about them for a little bit, and then they kind of go by the wayside. But this one was something that I couldn't shake.
Yeah.
And so I prayed about it, and I was thinking, why me? Like, of all people, why me to do a podcast? And it was weird because everything that I was listening to, none of it related to podcasting or anything, just random stuff. The things that I specifically prayed about, I would get an answer. Like something that I was listening to, it would say something that specifically answered what I was praying about. And so I was like, okay, God, I'll try this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home one day, I'd shared my idea with my husband. And I came home one day and he had bought some equipment. So I was like, okay, well, I guess we're doing this. And I don't know, it's something about podcasting. It's just like freedom.
Mm.
I get to do my own thing. And so, it's not something that somebody else has to tell me to do. I don't have to filter myself. I can talk openly and freely. And it's just something about that. There's no parameters. I can do what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great take on what it is. It's your platform, right? It's your creation, and there is definitely some freedom inside of that, to be able to talk to who you want,
Mm-hmm.
learn what you're looking for, and just really the opportunity to also share who you are, to
Mm-hmm.
people who may never have met you before, but are now your listeners. They've chosen you as someone they want to hear from. So that's really awesome. You mentioned earlier about talking with people, allowing them space to share their stories. Why are stories for you so important?
Stories are super important to me because I think they kind of, I think a lot of times people think that they're alone in their suffering, or if they're going through something, that nobody understands what they're going through. And it's not that way. So I feel like the best guests on my show are the ones who were like open book, and they just kind of shared. I like to get inside people's mind and let them share like what they were thinking when they went through something. And it's really just their testimony. I think there's power in story. I think it is the window to understanding.
Yeah.
And because everybody's different. So everybody has different experiences, and they're unique to us, even though they might be similar. So you can really understand about people, and you can understand something that um, may be different than your lifestyle.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. And when you started, were there any specific stories or specific perspectives or experiences that you wanted to learn more about, or were you more in the mindset of expanding people's narratives and different experiences?
I pretty much just went with what was interesting to me. I think I have a natural curiosity.
Mhm.
And so um, people always tell me, you ask the best questions, but I'm really just asking questions that I'm curious about. And so I went for the things that I thought were interesting to me, because I thought if they're interesting to me, they got to be interesting to something else.
Mhm.
But I also wanted to choose people who had experiences that maybe society is very black and white on,
Mhm.
and kind of spotlight that there's a gray area there. One example is abortion.
Mhm.
I talked to someone who wanted a baby, but she was pregnant and she had an abortion because the doctors had told her that if she had the baby, it would suffer and it probably wouldn't live long.
Mhm.
And so she was heartbroken. Everybody thinks that people have abortions because they don't want a baby, but
Mhm.
that was not her case. And from hearing her story, you see that there's this gray area there. it's not always the black and white that people paint it to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There aren't any single stories, as you said, and it's really great when there are platforms that allow people to share that, because a lot of us do sometimes think and believe that there is one single story, one single reasoning, at least, for certain polarizing subject matter and or life experiences. And so it's really important that you're able to kind of shine a light on the fact that, yeah, it might have been the same outcome, might have been the same goal or the same outside purview, but the reasonings or the story behind it can be so different. And that's important. But there's also the opportunity for people, and I know you mentioned this in the submission form, for people to relate, and that relatability aspect where you do think you're alone. A lot of us who are creatives or have different thoughts and ideas or experiences that may not be the most popular tend to isolate and not speak up about it, which then internalizes it to be, well, I must be alone in this journey or this experience. And it's often not true, but as long as we keep it to ourselves, it feels very true.
And I've talked to people after they've listened to some of my episodes, and I've had them say, I went through that too, and I never told anybody about it.
Storytelling is very liberating when we're willing to be with our truths, whatever it is. It's our human experience. And whoever was a part of that human experience, the story was a part of the story, they were a part of the story, you see a lot. I do biopic podcast production, and there's sometimes there's sensitive matters. It's like, I don't want to throw them out there or anything like that. Like they threw themselves in it when they became part of the experience, right? And so, yeah, storytelling and authentic storytelling is so important. It can be therapeutic, cathartic, in a lot of ways. Sometimes I've noticed that until given the opportunity, it's sometimes the first time they've been able to say it out loud, and how important that is. Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't even know that all this stuff is back there that they've been dealing with because of what they went through until they start talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Podcasting is really important in that way. And it's good to get that message out there. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's really important. Okay. All right. So next question. You answered us, the submission form to be a part of this. And one of the questions that I asked was, since I started my podcast, my life has changed in the following ways. Can you expand on that a bit and your answer to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest change in my life is that before I started podcasting, I would look at people and kind of be like, this person has their thing. They're really good at this. Like, I don't have a thing. What's my thing? And, I could never figure it out, and didn't really have a passion, Yes, I'm an educator, but, I don't know. There's something about it. I love helping the kids, but I feel like there's something more there. And also, I mentioned I was very quiet. And typically, I'm the person who doesn't speak up, who doesn't say anything. I'll just sit and I'll just listen. And so the biggest change is that podcasting kind of helped me find my voice. Before, it was like, who would want to listen to what I have to say,
Yeah.
And I don't know, people have just really taken to what I've been doing. And now I kind of feel like, okay, I do have something to say. I have something to share.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like your podcasting definitely supports, and that is really one of the number one answers for a lot of people, that I was able to find my voice, that I was able to finally kind of speak what's been in my heart, what's been on my mind for all these years, and then display it, to the world, and whoever listens, but at least now I've shared pieces of me that for so long I couldn't really find quite the way in which to get it out. So have people from your experience and people saying to you, they've listened to the podcast and they love what you have to say and the questions that you ask. Do you feel like people got to know you a little better from being able to experience you through your podcast?
I think so. I think I still have a little work to do as far as that. But I think I'm the type of person you could be around me every day and you still wouldn't know anything about me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in doing it, yes, they have learned a little bit about me. I'm a thinker, but I keep it all up here.
Yeah.
So podcasting allows me to get those things out.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Because that's important, to be able to have an experience in life where you are able to express, because from what I can tell so far, there is a lot inside, there's a lot of opportunity. And again, I can resonate with that. I can resonate with if someone told me that I'd be doing this right here with you right now, 5-6 years ago, I'd be like, no, I won't. Like, no. So it does. It's the opportunity, and then just being able to be willing to do something, start something, anything. Then it begins the expansion of how it really can look and turn out for you. So congratulations for
Thank
making
you.
the first step and being here now. It's really dope. And then you start. I just read a tweet just like right before we got on this call that said podcasts are like tattoos. Once you start getting them, you can't stop. You start creating
Yes,
more podcasts. So
I feel
right
that.
now, I know you probably have your hands full with the two. Are there any other kind of ideas that are percolating? I don't want you to give them away, but are you
Yeah,
think that there might be a possibility for others?
definitely. I have ideas all the time. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that, with a full-time job, I can't do all of them. But
Mm-hmm.
I see like a podcast network somewhere in the future.
Okay. All right. We definitely at the Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, we did a networking panel, and there were at least two on the panel that have their own podcast network, and it's all their podcasts. It's like they have 5 to 6, and it's them. They may have a co-host, they may, like you've done, which is an interesting take on networks, because a lot of times when people think of networks, they think they're different podcasts hosted by different people. So it does open up that possibility and that awareness that, oh, wait, I can do several, of course, with having the time to do several, which will come. So what would you consider your biggest podcast win to date?
I think that launching Blacktivities was really big. I don't know about you, but 2022, life was lifing,
All
like
right.
for real, for real.
Yeah.
And we took that from idea and made it a thing in 2022. I mean, my co-host, she was coming to my house to record, and
Mm.
she had a seizure on the way
Oh,
to
wow.
record our first episode. So it's
Mm.
just like anything that could happen happened in 2022, but we still managed to get a full season done and some great episodes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I hope that she's back to good health. And so what have you learned? What about yourself have you learned? And what about the expression would you say you've learned?
I think that I have learned, first and foremost, how to, I feel like I'm like a one woman show. So I don't outsource anything because I don't have the money to do that yet. But, I produce everything, I write everything, I edit everything. So I feel like I have learned the process of
Mhm.
what it takes, but also about myself, just that I can take something and make it happen.
Yeah.
Typically, like I said, I'm the idea person. I have all these ideas and I never follow through with any of them. But I have a new outlook kind of
Mhm.
from following through with this idea. Like, I feel more like, okay, what is next?
Mhm.
Where am I
Yeah,
going to take this? How am I going to grow?
yeah. You've collected new evidence about yourself,
Hmm.
and that's important. And a lot of us will collect that new evidence and still be looking for the old evidence somewhere. Um, so kudos to you for really, collecting the new evidence and moving forward with that. That's really dope, really dope. Um, so in coming into 2023, knowing what you have created and what your ideas, that you generate and you want to create, were there any specific goals that you have for 2023 for your podcasts?
I'm working on building a bigger community around the Blacktivities podcast. So that's my main goal, is
Okay.
to make it more interactive, and just build some diehard Blacktivities fans.
Okay. And what, if anything, have you kind of started to put in place or create in order to make that happen for yourself? If anything
We're
yet.
we're on Instagram,
Mhm.
um, but we have not been consistent in posting. And so that is a goal for 2023, to be more consistent with putting out content, and also starting up a newsletter.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, do you have a date for the newsletter launch yet?
February.
Okay. Awesome. We'll look
Everything's happening in
forward
February.
to it. Okay. We'll look forward to it. As a community, the point of this is to hold each other high and also to support and provide resources. A lot of times being one person shows, I can definitely relate to that. Um, Things are slow because we do feel like we're by ourselves in a lot of it. But then when we realize that there are actual people who have done it, are doing it, can hold you accountable, can support in it, it helps the process move so much quicker.
Mhm.
So definitely, we're here as support and resources to help you with that at any time. But we would definitely will look forward to that in February for
Yes,
sure.
thank you.
Okay. So you mentioned that you did attend one of the Afros and Audio podcast festivals. Which one, and what was your experience?
So I can't remember exactly if it was in 2020 or 2021, but I know that it was during the pandemic, because it was completely virtual.
Mhm.
And I actually won like a little scholarship to be able to attend, and it was my very first conference. So it was just very informative, and especially for somebody like me who was starting out at that time, it gave me a lot of insight, and also showed me what community looks like as far as in the podcasting world, because I've never experienced that before.
Mhm.
I think it was also amazing just to have so many Black people, so many Black creatives
Yeah,
around. That's just amazing to me.
it is super important, and even myself as the founder of that, it's every year it is amazing to see, right? And the creation of this was because I was also seeking community, right? And wanted support and resources myself, and people that I can talk to that can relate and also elevate it for
Mhm.
myself. Um, so it is really important, and that representation, it matters, that possibility matters. And so I'm glad that you were able to experience it for sure. It's amazing how much community translates even inside of that virtual space. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, when folks are intentional and committed to that. So I'm definitely glad you had that experience. And thank you for sharing it. I appreciate it. So are there any podcasts that you listen to that you want to shout out? Any of your favorites or anybody that you work with or anything like that?
Um, well, my favorite podcast is kind of a big podcast. Is The Daily.
Okay.
I just love the way that they investigate. Oftentimes with news things, you just hear this big headline, but they don't really explain the things behind it. So I like how they interview and they get both sides of the story, and they just kind of break it down and make it simple for you to understand what actually is going on.
Okay. All right. So, folks, if you're listening, check out The Daily. You heard it from Shannon. It's an amazing show. So we'll check it out. Anything that you want to promote and, talk about? I know we talked about your newsletter and your podcast, but anything specifically that you really want people to get behind? I know you mentioned the community. What would be your ideal community? And what would y'all do together if you had an opportunity to really create what you envision?
So we have our second season of Blackivities coming up starting the first week in February. And I really would like people to engage with us. We like to hear what people think about our topics. And we talk about certain topics. I mean, our first topic is going to be about Black History Month, like whether or not we should still have it. Is it still needed? And we pose a lot of questions. So ideally, we want our community to tell us what they think. And we like to kind of shout people out on our episodes who do share with us. I envision it just being like a big cookout.
Okay.
Like we all family.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. Very cool. So, how can people discover the podcast? Are you on all the streaming platforms?
We're on all the streaming platforms. We have our Instagram page. It's at Blackivities Pod. We have our website, blacktivitiespod.com. I also started an LLC, so we have blackpanache.com.
Okay.
And I think it's probably pretty easy to find us if you just search.
And what are some of the things that, as far as like strategies and stuff, when it comes to things that you've learned in your podcast, in this podcast journey so far, that you would want to impart on an aspiring person who's interested or curious about podcasting, and or the veteran who's committed to one way? Are there any strategies or tips that, from your own personal experience, that you want to convey?
I would just say, I think tell the story is a big one, because even if it's not like your typical storytelling thing, if it's not like a fictional thing, you're still telling the story. When I ask questions to my guests, I try to ask them in an order that would tell the story. There's still storytelling in all different kinds of podcasts. So that's the biggest thing. Another thing I would say is just be yourself, because you can tell when someone is authentic and when they're not. And people are going to love what you do because of you and your personality. So I would say that's my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it great to have people accept you exactly as you are? Right?
Yeah, we think that nobody understands us, but there's so many people out there that are like us and have shared interests. So people are surprised.
Yeah. And it's important because there are people who are in the shadows that they just need to see you, and that gives them the freedom to say, okay, I'm all right. It's possible for me as well. So that is really important. I truly believe that our greatness and what makes us great isn't about us, right? It's about those folks who are waiting and watching for someone just like you or just like me to show them that things are possible. So it's great that you are representing in that way, and being a part of this movement, which is podcasting. It's really a great industry for us to be able to speak up and tell our stories, and especially from a Black perspective. I really believe that after all of this is over, once this is all said and done, where we're working to monetize and create communities and all that sort of thing, we've laid a living record down of our experiences and our stories, that will live on long after. And
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it's super important, and definitely seems that way for you as well.
Yeah. I think that was a big thing with Blacktivities. We wanted um, us to tell about our experiences instead of someone else telling about our experience.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. That is one of the beautiful opportunities in podcasting, and I hope it never changes. I think as long as folks like you and I are involved in this space, we'll do what we can to make sure it doesn't. So that's a great thing. Well, anything else you want to share with the folks before I let you go? Whether it's personal, professional, podcast related, anything that you'd like to impart?
Um, I don't know, man. I mean, I just I'm so excited about Black voices being in the spotlight.
Mhm.
There's no like hate or jealousy when I see other Black podcasters. It's just like, yes, like go. I'm seriously excited about just sharing and networking and meeting new creatives that are Black, um, and having their voices be out there.
Yeah. I agree with you, and that's one of the missions and goals is to have more Black podcasters and active podcasts in the global market, because there's a lot of stories to be told. As we
Yes.
mentioned earlier, there is no single story. We might have a lot of similarities, um, and our cultures. We look like sometimes we grew up in the same household, or the same area, but there's so much more to it, and giving people that opportunity to speak about their own perspective and experiences, even if it's something that we don't understand, it gives us the opportunity to understand it. Um, and I think that's a responsibility of us all. It's okay to not get something at first, but it's not okay to not seek to learn it, and to understand people on a level that provides equity and inclusiveness. So again, congratulations on the work that you've done. I'm looking forward to more people discovering both of your podcasts. All right. Anything else?
That's it. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to close this out and you stay right there. Okay.
Okay.
I want to give a big thanks to Shannon for being with us today, and to our Afros and Audio and Black podcast community for supporting our commitment for community and collaboration. If you'd like to join the Black Podcast Association, the link will be in the description below, as well as Shannon's information. You can follow us on all social media channels at Afros and Audio. And thanks again, Shannon, for being a part of Afros and Audio's first ever Black History Month interview series. All right, until next time, thank you.